fish that I wanted to talk about, or invertebrate actually, that I want to talk about, was one that I've struggled a lot with. It took me a bunch of tries to get able to be successful at keeping them. Is Neocardinia shrimp, or also known as cherry shrimp. When I first got into wanting to do small tanks, because when me and my wife got married, we were living in a studio apartment and didn't have a whole lot of space for fish tanks, especially like a 55 gallon or above that I was used to having when I had Malawi cichlids. So I was looking for smaller occupants that I could do, and so obviously cherry shrimp or Neocardinias were all the rage then, and still are. They're a great small fun shrimp to have and are supposed to be really hardy, and they can be and are if you follow a few things. So I want to give you some tips and tricks on how to keep them after me experimenting and failing quite a lot. Killed so many shrimp, so sad for them, but after I found out a few things, it's made it way easier. So the first thing is, and what I feel like is the most important thing you can do for keeping cherry shrimp, is to put them in a tank that is already established. If you're wanting to get cherry shrimp, they're not very good at accepting food like fish food or like shrimp food as their main source of food, especially when they're first introduced to a new tank. They eat a lot of biofilm as their main source of food when they first get introduced to a tank. It's a new area, they're hiding everywhere, they're not really coming out to get food because they're prey for most animals, and so they have a lot of predators, and so through evolving through and getting used to them being the lowest on the food chain, they have learned to be very, very cautious in their lives, and so it's super important. So I wouldn't introduce them into a tank that hasn't been around or being used with other fish or something inside of it for at least 6 months. I found that was the biggest thing to helping them survive. Everything else after that is just icing on the cake. The next thing is purchasing a large enough group of cherry shrimp. Cherry shrimp can oftentimes be quite sensitive to water fluctuations or changes, so you'll want to make sure that you get a big enough group that you can have some of them die off and still have a group around to be able to continue and reproduce and live in your tank. With that, if you have the opportunity to buy a buried shrimp or a mom shrimp that has eggs, I would do that, because as soon as those eggs hatch, you have 30 plus babies that can live inside your tank and make it so that your colony can exist in your tank. One thing you'll want to do is, if you want to have your shrimp stay pure color, I would get only one type. But if you're wanting what they call a skeleton, a skittle tank where you have a bunch of different colors, just know when they breed and have babies, you're not going to really know what those babies are going to look like. They could end up being brown, they could be weird sorts of colors, they could end up being the same colors, but you just really don't know. Another thing is knowing where your shrimp came from. Lots of shrimp lines have been bred and inbred to get those nice cool colors that now exist, and sometimes their genetics are quite fragile and so they die really easily. So finding a good source of shrimp is also a great thing that you would need. Like right now, I've introduced and gotten green and blue shrimp recently. I had yellow and red and a different color of blue for a really long time, and I found that while buying shrimp for my dad for Father's Day, that there's this guy out of California that my local fish store buys from that are really, really hardy. So whenever they bring in shrimp from him, I get shrimp from them. If they're from Indonesia, they don't really adapt to Utah water very well, and so I have a lot lower success rate of them surviving. So finding a source where they have really strong genetics and really hardy shrimp is best. Next is making sure that your shrimp are comfortable and not stressed out. So this would be adding lots of decorations in the tank, or having lots of plants, whether they're live or fake, to help have them places to hide. I found it's extremely helpful for them to feel secure and safe, so they're not stressed, and that helps them survive longer. Another one is I like to keep fish with my shrimp. I've found that this helps keep the nitrogen cycle going better in the tank, and so it helps them adapt with ammonia and other things a lot better, because it's mostly processed through the nitrogen cycle and that good bacteria. My favorite thing to keep with them is plecos. I have a lot of plecos in my tanks, and I found that plecos, as far as I can tell, don't hunt or actively eat live cherry shrimp, so they make great tank mates. I have seen them eat dead cherry shrimp, but I've never seen them hunt down live ones. I feel like this helps with the nitrogen cycle, but also feeding the plecos, they break down food. There's excess food, so your shrimp have food always available. They eat the poop and other stuff that your plecos put off, so it's a great symbiotic relationship. But with that, it's I found it's very helpful. A lot of fish will eat shrimp, especially baby shrimp, but I found that there's a few that work really great. Another one is Cory catfish work really well with shrimp. I know a lot of people swear by loaches are another great one that they say works well with them. Anything that has a really small mouth is great with that. As for cherry shrimp, they're really fun. I love them. They go great in a lot of tanks, but another thing to think about is if you get too small of a tank, if one of them dies, it can create an ammonia spike. So make sure you get a big enough tank for them. I would suggest a 10-gallon tank. A, you can have way more shrimp in there, but B, it gives you the chance for mistakes to be made without them all just dying off. But yeah, those are just a few tips that I have that help me keep shrimp. And yeah,